And hello again, and here we are back in my garage on a very cold, windy, horrible day. It's getting quite late now actually, but this is the only time I've got to come in the garage all weekend. So the last few days I've not really had time to do much with the 1170. If you recall, we left it when I had an oil leak, another oil leak, where the new outrigger system bolts to the bike. A bit disappointing, so I took the whole system off, took the plate off, hoping to see an obvious fault with a gasket maybe or something like that. Couldn't find anything at all, so I was kind of at a loss. So what's happened since then is, here we have the inner plate of that system, which bolts to the side of the transmission there, and this is the homemade gasket that we used. I also used some quite expensive Worth RTV sealant as well with that, but both weren't quite good enough it seems because it leaked. So since then I've dug out my gasket paper here. This is called Flexoid gasket paper. I bought a kit of it. There's various different thicknesses you can use, and having double checked, let me put that down a second, having double checked the thickness of this thing, this was the second to thinnest one I had. Turns out this is about, I think, 0.25mm thick, so I thought maybe that's a bit too thin. So I went through, and there's some here that's 1.6mm, which is far too thick, it's like cardboard that. I eventually settled on 0.8mm, and over here we have a duplicate I've made. This is the new gasket. As I say, it's about 3 times thick in this one. This is 0.25, that's 0.8. I made it by just copying out the shape with a pen, cut it out, and I got the holes done by using a couple of punches, which came from a kit I've had for donkey's years. In fact, I've not used it more than a handful of times, but you know, at last got to use it. And yeah, it's pretty simple, it's just a punch, use it with a hammer, and you make a nice neat hole. So now what I've got to do is clean off all the old RTV silicone that's still on those gasket faces, and reapply the silicone, and then put this on and bolt up this plate once again. Now, when it comes to cleaning off the RTV silicone, it's not easy stuff to get off, and it seems the best thing I could find, and that was confirmed by Google, was acetone. And I did have a small bottle of it here. In fact, it's also called where are we? Yeah, I think it's nail varnish remover, but it's the same stuff. And I was running out of that, so I had to wait to order some more. And I got a nice big 1 litre bottle, which should be more than enough for me. In fact, it's good stuff. Just use it all kinds of things to clean off grease and oil from various parts. And it's good because it evaporates really quickly. And in fact, I learned my lesson for that, because many years ago I worked in a chemical plant, and I could go down to the labs and get as much of this stuff as I wanted. So one day I went down there with a little container that I'd got from home. I said, "Hey mate, can you please refill this for me?" "Yeah, no problem." You know, put a litre or 2 in it. I mean, they got through thousands of gallons of it, so it wasn't really a problem for me. Brought it back to my office, left it on a shelf for the day. When I came to go home to collect it, it was pretty much empty. I was like shocked. Where's it all gone? It's all gone. What's going on? Now, to be fair, the office did smell of acetone, which wasn't a surprise because I did have it in the office. But yeah, basically the lid wasn't quite done up, and I left it on a window ledge with the sun on it, and it just evaporated. The whole damn bottle evaporated. And when I told this lad in the labs what happened, he just started laughing and said, "Yeah mate, you gotta watch out for that. This stuff evaporates so quickly." So whenever I've got this stuff, I always put the lid back on again really quickly. So yeah, so my next job then is to remove all that the RTV sealant from the gasket surfaces, test this out, make sure it fits okay. If I've got all the holes drilled correctly, it should do. And then, well, it's not easy, but I've got to refit this with the gear change mechanism in place, which is very difficult to do, it's very fiddly, but that's the way it's got to be done. Bolt it all up, put some more oil in it, and we'll see what happens then. But right now it's getting quite late, and I've got a few more things to do today, so we'll come back when I've done all that. And so next up then, I've got a few parcels here that have arrived. Got this long tube here. In it, I've got some aluminium bar. You have it here. Now, a while ago I bought some stainless steel bar of similar size. In fact, this is a 6, an 8 and a 10mm length. It's a metre, of course. And the reason I've got this is because, well, it's always handy to have it around, but in particular, I was struggling to put, where's it gone? Yeah, here it is. This here we have the stainless steel 6mm bar that I want to make the gear change linkage from. To do that, I've got to put a thread on each end. doing it by hand, and it's just bloody impossible. I mean, the stainless steel is so hard and so difficult to cut, because I've got to cut a hand, and do it by hand of course, so in the end it was just like, oh, give up. You really need a lathe for this, you know, so you can hold it steadily and put an even pressure on it. Haven't got that, so I thought, hang on, I'll just try a different approach, so I could do the same thing, this time make it out of aluminium, solid aluminium bar, and that's much easier to cut, and that shouldn't be a problem. So let's pop all that back into the tube. It actually wasn't that expensive, it's about, you know, £5 or something like that for each of those bars. Use it for all kinds of things. But then I also had a better idea. So somewhere underneath this pile of bits, I've got another parcel. It's my smaller parcel. And in here, I've got a few, I've got 4 lengths of similar. This is 10mm. Not a bar, it's not a solid bar, it's a tube. Like so. 10mm outer, 6mm inner. So what I can do with this, in fact it might end up being the best solution, take one of these and use it as my gear change linkage, but rather than cutting a thread on this, I could tap a thread on the inside of this tube, then insert a stainless thread in it, a threaded bar, a little short threaded bar, cut it off from a bolt or something like that, and then that could in turn be used to screw on the rose joint on each end, and you get something that's very light and very strong. It also means that you also get the benefit of a very tough stainless steel threaded end, which you don't get if you make it out of, where's it gone? Yeah, solid aluminium, because that's quite soft, it might tear and rip at some point. So yeah, I think I might go for that particular solution. And luckily enough, I could buy it in chunks of 30 centimetres, i.e. about a foot. I need about 245 to make my gear linkage, so one should do just right. So yeah, that's something I'll do perhaps tomorrow or whenever I get time anyway. Right, so that's the 1170. But although I've not had much time this week to do things, I have been doing a lot of small little jobs on other projects. And one of those small jobs is what I've got in this bundle here. I've got to be so careful with it because it's very delicate, and I really don't want to drop it or damage it in any way. So I'm going to move the camera and we'll see what I've got in here. Okay, so here we have a crank. And no, this is not a twin crank. This is a crank for an inline 4. It's just not been finished yet. These are the 2 inner conrods and the 2 inner parts of the crank. And we've still got to add the 2 outer conrods and obviously the 2 end pieces. And the reason I've got it here is because I've been taking it back and to from Jeff's place to Jeff to Welders, because this crank is being welded. Hang on, bang. Hear that? Fireworks. We've just gone over the 5th of November, bonfire night, Guy Fawkes night, but today's the 6th. But some idiots are still letting off fireworks nearby. I guess it's a Saturday, I guess. Hopefully my dog isn't too concerned about that, because he's now in the house. He won't be going out again until tomorrow morning, I think. Anyway, back to the crank here. What we've done is we've welded this inner part to the two webs here, and then Jeff could then add these 2 parts, these 2 webs and the 2 conrods. So now we need to weld these 2 outer webs in place to the central bearing surface. So we're going to weld this area here, just there, both sides, very carefully, because you don't want the heat to distort it. This has now been trued by Jeff. It's less than 1 thou out, so I want to keep it that way. So once it's been welded, I'm going to take it back to Jeff. He then checks it and adds the 2 outer webs, get it all trued up again, and then it goes back to Jeff the welder this is, to do the final welding on the 2 outer webs. So yeah, that's what's happening now. I'm so careful, I don't want to damage it, I don't want to get it dirty. It's all immaculately clean. So let's put that away, and I'll put it somewhere safe. Oh, and what I didn't say was, that crank is for this bike. It's going to go in the Mark II engine. It was a Z1000 Mark II. It's now going to be a Z1000 Mark II with a 1400cc big bore in it. So we have seen the cases for this bike some time ago when they came back from Triple S. They've been powder coated, look fantastic in satin black, and they've been sitting around for the last few months waiting for other things to happen. And one of the things that had to happen was the crank had to be rebuilt. What the crank I had was damaged, so I bought another crank, get parts of it. Hang on, there's more fireworks. And that crank, as it turned out, was mislabelled, and it wasn't for a Mark II, it was for a later model, so the parts weren't interchangeable, so I bought another crank. They're about £100 each, by the way, which is the one that we're working with now. It was a really nice crank, so took it all apart, looked good. Just now been rebuilding it, truing it up, and yeah, that's going to be the crank. Once it's finished and welded up, it's going to go in the engine in this thing. And originally I wanted this to be done for my birthday, my very significant birthday, at the end of January 2022. But maybe it'll be 2023 by now, who knows. Things just take longer than you expect, I guess. So yeah, that's what's happening with the Mark II. I've also, of course, been buying some parts for it here. This is a big box, and I've got some other parts around, which I've been slowly buying to make this thing a complete bike, because there's still an awful lot of parts it needs. Well, I think my neighbour's having a firework party in the garden, but never mind. Yes, as I was saying, we've got most of the parts I need now for the engine we've got, so once the crank's done, the build should go quite quickly. Still lots more to decide, lots more parts to buy. I was dead set on buying a pair of wheels from Dimag, some 7-spoke ones, but I've got off the idea now because I think although they're fantastic wheels and they're quite expensive, they do look a bit generic. You know, they don't stand out. It's like, oh, 7-spoke wheel, whatever. So I did think of buying the 3-spoke version, the original Dimag style wheel, which are 3 spokes, which are now available in aluminium as well as magnesium, because I wouldn't want magnesium wheels on a bike. They're too fragile for a road bike. Yeah, so I'm undecided. I was thinking of buying a pair of carbon fibre wheels for this bike, but as it turns out, my timing was wrong, because Dimag are in the middle of moving factories or something, and they've stopped making carbon fibre wheels for bikes. But they do say they should have some new designs out soon, so who knows, by the time I get around to it, they might have come out with some new models. Yeah, so that's all in hand, and that's what the crank's for. So that's the Mark II. Looking forward to this bike. It's hopefully going to be a lot easier, a lot quicker to build than the bloody 650 1170, which has been, you know, just a whole series of problems and troubles and unexpected difficulties for the last 2 years. Anyway, but we'll ignore that for the time being. We're now almost over those problems, and we should be starting the bike up quite soon.